theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. The historian Neil Ferguson describes the situation America is in now vis-a-vis Iran in part this way. The Iranians have survived regime change and discovered that closing the strait is just as powerful a lever in economic warfare as they had always hoped. It's not, despite the Russian quip, an economic nuke, because unlike a nuclear weapon, you can use it. Where we go from here is fairly predictable. I would be surprised if Trump now deploys ground forces. There will be more negotiations, so Islamabad, here we come. There may have to be more bombing if the Iranians dust down the North Vietnamese playbook of stringing U.S. negotiators along. And the final compromise will take longer to be agreed upon than Mr. Market currently believes. Talking about the prediction markets. Maybe. I'm not sure I accept, as much respect as I have for Ferguson, I'm not sure I would accept this characterization of discovering that closing the strait is just a powerful lever in economic warfare as they'd always hoped. Did they anticipate a blockade where they would be the ones suffering on the end of this powerful lever that they thought they had? Again, I'm just trying to get somebody to explain to me how Iran is in a position where they have particular leverage here, where time is on their side here, with no ability to retaliate, really, other than acts of piracy, effectively. A faltering economy, to say the least. And, again, facing the prospect of losing estimated $400 million a day by not being able to ply their trade in natural resources. Maybe our next guest can explain those to me. Kelley Vlahos is editor-in-chief at Responsible Statecraft and a senior advisor at the Quincy Institute. Previously, she was the executive director of the American Conservative. Kelley, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. Thank you.
So, great to have you. So, do you see Iran in a particularly advantageous position vis-a-vis Trump and America's desires at present?
Well, I think you make some good points. You talked about the time being of essence. Iran is running out of time. You talked about capacity. Iran very much degraded in the war since the initial February 28th attack. And money, revenue, they're losing a lot of it because of the blockade. But point for point, so are we. And Iran knows that. We don't have much time because the global economy is in turmoil right now. And prospects are that we could be losing $2.2 trillion in global GDP the longer this goes on. Capacity, our arsenal is depleted. It was depleted after Ukraine, sending all those weapons to Ukraine, defending Israel since October 7th, the fight with the Houthis, the June bombing of Iran, and now the current war. So our capacity is low, and if our capacity is low, Israel's is even lower. We've seen their missile defense is not even working in some cases because they've had to save some of their capacity. We do not know how much Iran has left. It's degraded, but they have stores of weapons, and they've been building drones like mad. So I see this more as a game of chicken where both sides hold leverage, but it is not clear who holds more at this point. I'm thinking Iran does because we have a global economy that's on a knife's edge, and Trump has to watch for that. And he's got to watch for the political impact of his decisions at home.
Well, yeah, although he he suggested yesterday, knowing that Iran is playing this stalling game, I guess, or at least that's what seems to be what the IRGC wants to do. That he's got all the time in the world. That's what he said on CNBC, and of course he wants to communicate that to the Iranians. So he doesn't communicate that he feels up against the wall to make a decision he doesn't want to make. But in terms of $2.2 trillion of global GDP, even if there is economic shock, as there has been some, America is obviously the best positioned to weather any such shock and still marshal on, as we have been doing over the last 6 weeks. So I don't know. What happens in Western Europe, yes, it has an impact on America, Western Europe, for example. But I don't know that puts us in the American economy on that knife's edge.
Well, I go back to the 2024 election. The Republicans under Trump and MAGA had been really pushing for the sort of reindustrialization of America. Globalization had been eschewed by both parties. And there's this sense that, particularly during COVID, that we were so vulnerable to globalized supply chains, this highly networked economy. Now, I agree with that, and I'm sure you do too, but it's only been 2 years. We have not even made a dent in trying to reshore all of these supply lines. So what's happening in the Gulf does affect the American economy in so many ways, whether it be the energy, whether it be the helium that cools semiconductors that we want to build here but are still importing, the fertilizer that we import, but also we import components so we can make fertilizer here. So our farmers are being disrupted, truckers, fuel. It goes across the gambit. Even the U.S. military buys components on the global market for its drones and for its weapon systems. So that's going to be disrupted. I don't think we are really appreciating what a shock this will have to the American system, because we think it's happening over there, and a lot of those ships are going to European and Asian countries, but those European and Asian countries supply stuff to the United States that we need to make here.
Well, and this may be why Trump has invoked the Defense Production Act again for enhanced domestic production of some of the items you're talking about. But in addition to that, we also see basically the leverage that Tehran has being competed away in the energy sector as ships are making their way to the Gulf of America. That's also happening. So, there's a lot of variables in play, and that's one of them. And Holman Jenkins made this point in the Wall Street Journal the other day, too. And now you have this drilling in the North Sea. You have Germany being more jealous in protecting their coal and nuclear energy sources. Mm-hmm. So you have market reactions happening all over the place, including away from these natural resource extortionists like the mullahs in Tehran.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that there won't be a real shift here after this war is over towards more independence on the part of some of these countries to either move away from fossil fuels or industrialize on their part so they're not dependent. And I hope this gives us more impetus to be more independent in our energy supplies. I'm just saying that the initial shock, which I was listening to Bloomberg surveillance this morning, and they're saying that gas prices could be higher than $4 through the summer. And that's if the war ends at some point, which nobody can predict. So if we look at this at a purely political perspective, Donald Trump is very vulnerable right now, because what you're talking about, and maybe long-term fixes, but immediately we're going to see prices escalate. We're going to see shocks to the system. Economically, we're going to see higher fuel prices, higher consumer prices, and there's going to be a backlash politically against Trump and the Republicans going into the midterms. And my question, taking more 30,000 for you, is what is it for? Because we literally took the country to war, but we have no long-term solution because Iran is not going to give up until it gets some concessions. So we might be looking at a situation where we're at the status quo in terms of our relationship with Iran, but also facing super higher prices at the gas pump and elsewhere, and more vulnerabilities economically. And I'm thinking the American people are going to be like, what just happened here?
And so then you would have suggested, based on that logic, that he not extend the ceasefire yesterday, and he should have pressed down and started to re-inflict punishment on the Iranians as promised.
I mean, you or your viewers might not want to hear this, but I would have recommended not going to war in the first place.
Okay, but we're here now, so how do you get out then?
I mean, how do you get out is you got to make a deal with the Iranians.
And what does that
You're
look
going
like?
to have to give them, well, I mean, again, you're not going to want to hear this, but it probably looks similar to like the deals that we've had in the past where we put restrictions on their nuclear program in exchange for lifting the sanctions so they can rebuild their economy. That is exactly what they want. They're going to dig in deeper until they get it. So get those restrictions on the nuclear program in exchange for some concessions that we can give them. And ultimately, there has to be some sort of agreement that the U.S. and Israel is not going to bomb Iran again, because we can't keep going back to the well every few years and get into another war and send the global economy into a tailspin if for nothing. And so I do think there needs to be some serious security assurances given in exchange for restrictions on the nuclear program.
Well, restrictions on the nuclear program. The restriction is you don't have a nuclear program, not one that is to develop weapons grade uranium for the purpose of having a nuclear weapon. I mean, you want nuclear power. That's a different thing, as we've said all along. But of course, the Obama program provided the cash to position themselves for weapons development and stockpiling ballistic missiles and drones and everything else, combined with giving them cover to cheat, which is what they were doing. So, I mean, so what do we? How can we bind ourselves to saying we're not going to bomb Iran when, you know, it's more likely than not, if this same element is in charge, they will return to what they were doing at Pickaxe Mountain or under some other cover of darkness and pursue nuclear weapons again, because that's their long-term fail-safe. So they would never have to effectively never have to worry about consequences from being a state sponsor of terror.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the sad reality is you're probably going to get something similar to what Obama had agreed to in 2008, 2009, because what he agreed to were restrictions on the nuclear enrichment, which was working according to the United Nations.
Well, how is it working? They have 100 pounds of enriched uranium. That's a 60%. That's a stone's throw. I mean, how is that? Well, we know they were cheating.
I can answer that.
We know they were cheating.
I can answer that.
Okay.
They weren't cheating, and the United Nations said they weren't cheating. Then the Trump administration got out of the deal in 2018, and they cooled their heels for a little, and then they said, okay, well, we're just going to start enriching more then. And that's where all those increases in the enrichment came after Trump got out of the deal in 2018. And so, the deal was actually keeping guardrails on that program until Trump got out. If you don't believe me, I mean, there's plenty of documentation on this. But the point is,
well, you'll
hand them money. The agreement was that they would get the frozen funds, their own assets, frozen in exchange for these restrictions. That's where the money that you talk about, the palace of cash, had gone to Iran. Well, what do you think is going to happen now? We are going to make an agreement eventually for restrictions in exchange for sanctions to be lifted, which means money to Iran. And unfortunately, Trump is going to have to explain that to the American people. But Iran is proving that it can dig in. So fast forward to today, we have an Iran that is not going to let up. It is digging in for the long haul. It's being what is going on as an existential fight for its own survival. And they are not going to give anything until we lift sanctions. And so we're back to square one. And that's why I believe that the war was folly to begin with, because we should have just stayed at the negotiating table and negotiated a deal that Trump could say was a better deal than Obama. And he didn't. He bombed them instead, twice in the middle of a negotiation. And Israel has killed negotiators. So we're in kind of a less certain place now, dealing with new negotiators who everybody says are more hardline than the first one. So I don't know what kind of deal we can get, or we could just be in stasis. And I don't think the American people appreciate that either.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, because I think there are a lot more options than, particularly with where Iran is now as compared to where it was when we led with surrender under Obama. They're obviously much more debilitated economically and militarily. That's unquestionable. And I think there are other options on the table besides just resuscitating some facsimile of that previous deal. Given where Iran is right now, they're going to keep doing what they're doing. Well, what is it they're doing? Just not capitulating formally, but as we said at the open, they are pretty limited in their options and also limited in time. And with more time comes fewer options for them, other than they just are committed to martyrdom. Okay, well, that could be arranged.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, the news today is that they just captured 2 vessels and are sailing them back to the coast of Iran. So and one of them is supposedly an Israeli-linked vessel, shipping vessel. So
yes,
again,
we stipulate they have the capacity for piracy. I mean, it is pretty clear that
we are capturing vessels too. So is it piracy for them and not piracy for us?
No.
They're doing a mirror image of the blockade that we've put on. This is
right.
This is war.
Yes. I know. I'm disputing your characterization on a capacity basis. We have naval superiority. They have the ability to essentially behave like pirates. Those are very different positions to be in.
And at the end of the day, does it matter? Because if we had the superiority that you speak of, which we do with hardware and with the military firepower, but we're still at the same place, playing chicken with a lesser power, playing chicken with a country that we thought we could just blow right out of the water within days, February 28th. And now we're looking across the table with them eyeball to eyeball, and there seems to be no progress. So I think at the end of the day, our military superiority doesn't mean as much as we thought it did. And I think that actually puts the onus on us for finding another way out of this. Do we go back and we try to hammer out a deal, or do we escalate? And what does escalation mean? Are we prepared as a country to invade with American men and women on the ground? Are we prepared to use nuclear weapons? I think we're running out of military options.
Not military and combined with economic options. I don't think we're running out of them at all. I think, as we said at the outset, they're on the clock, much more so than this administration is. Even if there is some additional short-term political water that is taken on in advance of this larger, I think, laudable goal of eliminating Iran as the lead state sponsor of terror in this world, and certainly preventing them from pursuing a nuclear program, at least for another generation. That buys more time for Western Civ, which is a good thing, too. All right, we'll leave it there, but I appreciate this spirited discussion. Kelley Vlahos is editor-in-chief at Responsible Statecraft. She's also senior advisor at the Quincy Institute, and she previously was the executive editor of the American Conservative. Kelley, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And she joined us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back to Ask Hasselus.
Give me an extra large deep dish pepperoni.
Hasselus doesn't sell pizza. We sell mattresses for way less.
Do I need a coupon?
No, sir. Others sell